Hey folks, welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor, and this is my September wrap-up. So I read 11 things in September, although there was a bit of a flurry of short things towards the end of the month. But it was quite a good reading month, and I'm pretty sure I enjoyed everything that I finished. So September reading wrap. What did I start the month with? I started the month by finishing The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. This is one of my Alcrate books. It's YA, it's contemporary. Becky Albertalli is famous for writing Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which I haven't actually read. This is technically in the same universe. Simon and a couple of those characters do appear sort of tangentially because they know someone who the characters in this book knows. But for all its YA, Becky Albertalli stole my brain. Becky Albertalli stole my teenage brain. So the main character in here is a girl she's a little heavier. She has a twin sister and a little brother and two mothers who are about to get married because the vote comes through to allow gay marriage. And it's summer and she's got a new job but she's had 27 crushes and she's never actually been kissed. So it's about, a girl trying to get the confidence to take that step and what does she actually want in a boyfriend. But honestly, the questions this girl was asking were the same questions I was asking in my brain when I was a teenager, like about my own body, about fashion, about how sex works, about also hygiene and all that kind of stuff. Like, seriously, Becky Albertalli stole my brain. I actually thought for a long while that the main character was actually I thought she might be ace. She's not, I don't think. But seriously, for most of the book, she totally reads like I read. So I really enjoyed that because, yes, it's YA contemporary, which is not quite my thing usually. But oh my God, where was this book when I was 16? So the next book, post-it note, the next book that I read was on Kindle and it was a reread, and it was The Jewel and Her Lapidary by Fran Wilde, which was a novelette on the Hugo list, I think in 2017. For the 2017 Hugos. So it's a fantasy novelette about a world where in this particular kingdom, jewels have power. And in order to control the jewels, the royal family, who are then known as jewels, have lapidaries who vow, because they can hear the whispers and they can be sent mad by the jewels, but by making their vows and sealing them and soldering their vows into place, they then serve the jewels. Unfortunately, the king is betrayed by his lapidary, and the girls in the book are the last two left, with an invading army on the way. So it's all about them trying to do what they can for their people, with what little resources they have. So I really enjoyed that when I first read it for the Hugos. And I reread it recently because one of the other books on this list, which I will get to. But then I had an essay due in the beginning of the first part of the month. And so because it's me, and when I'm working on an assignment, I tend to want to read completely irrelevant nonfiction. So I finally finished The Hamilton. Oh yeah. So this is the biography of Alexander Hamilton by Chernow. This is the book that Lin-Manuel Miranda read, and it was inspired to write Hamilton the musical, which is honestly why I read it. It's a massive book, and it's about the founding of America, essentially, and Alexander Hamilton's role in that. It's actually written really engaging. I've been reading it for a while. I did get bogged down at one stage probably about halfway through. And that's the bit where it goes really into detail into Alexander Hamilton's role as the first Treasury Secretary of the United States of America, which means it gets really into financial policy and the creation of the American financial system, which is not really my area of interest. So I got bogged down for a while, but I finally got through it, and I sort of really zoomed through, as fast as I can zoom when I'm reading nonfiction, zoomed through the rest of it, which is a little more salacious. But yeah, so I think it's a really engaging read, and I've definitely learned more about American history than I ever knew before. So I probably know far too much about American founding history now. But anyway, so that was, I was really pleased to finish that, and it's, if it's the kind of thing you want to read about, it's definitely an engaging read. Then I kept on the nonfiction train, and I skipped ahead a little bit of the Galactic Suburbia podcast, and I finished How to Suppress Women's Writing by Joanna Russ. So this is the book, look at the forest of tabs. This is the book I've been reading along with the Galactic Suburbia podcast. Every month or so they read a new chapter. And I got to the point where it was had to read the last chapter, and then it was like the epilogue and the afterword, and I just zipped through them. So this is a really seminal book from the 1970s, and it's nonfiction. Joanna Russ is a science fiction writer, but she was also an academic, and she's basically writing about why it is you don't hear about female authors throughout history, how women's writing is suppressed. And unfortunately, a lot of it, I mean, things have gotten better, but a lot of it is still so recognisable to someone of my age, to someone in the 21st century. So it's full of chapter titles, and basically what's on the cover says it all. So, she didn't write it. But if it's clear she did the deed, she wrote it, but she shouldn't have. It's political, sexual, masculine, feminist. She wrote it, but look what she wrote about. The bedroom, the kitchen, her family, other women. She wrote it, but she wrote only one of it. Jane Eyre. Poor dear, that's all she ever. She wrote it, but she isn't really an artist, and it isn't really art. It's a thriller, a romance, a children's book. It's sci-fi. She wrote it, but she had help. Robert Browning, Branwell Bronte, her own masculine side. She wrote it, but she's an anomaly. Woolf, with Leonard's help. She wrote it, but How to Suppress Women's Writing. These are all the excuses. You know, oh, she didn't really write it. Oh, she wrote it, but it's not actually literature. She wrote it, but she had help. She wrote it, but look what it's about. It's not about anything important, you know. And it's really hard. Like, there is stuff missing out of here, and Joanna Russ later recognised that, and the afterword, in fact, is looking at writers of colour and how the same arguments can be made about writers of colour. It's really completely missing trans writers, but it's confronting. It's a confronting read, but definitely worthwhile, and it's definitely still relevant. So, How to Suppress Women's Writing by Joanna Russ in this nicely new printed edition. So it was very hard. Apparently, it was very hard to find for a long time, but it's been republished. So definitely pick it up if you can. It's really worth a read. The next thing I read is also on a post-it note, and it was also non-fiction, and it was audio. So in Australia, we have this thing called the quarterly essay. So essentially, they're published every quarter by journalists, politicians, etc. And it's like a long-form essay on a specific topic that is relevant to Australian society. So recently, Quarterly Essay 75 came out, and it was called Men at Work, Australia's Parent Trap, and it was by Annabel Crabb. So I've never read a quarterly essay before, not an actual quarterly essay. But I listened to Annabel Crabb's podcast. I've watched a lot of her TV journalism. She did a great show for a while called Kitchen Cabinet, where she went around to a politician's place and they made her lunch. And she interviewed them over lunch. So this is continuing on a topic that she's been quite interested in a while, and that is looking at the gender gap in the workplace, but from the perspective of, we're doing all this work to try and encourage women to the workplace, but what do men need to do? What do men want? Not what do men want, but there are also barriers for men stepping out of the traditional role and in order to get that gender balance, men actually have to start like moving the other direction as well, sort of, if you know what I mean. So this in particular is about, this quarterly essay is basically about what are the barriers, both legally and in society, that stop men from taking up paternity leave, parental leave. Like, very few men take more than a couple of weeks of parental leave when they have a child. And she looks at all the stats about what that actually ends up meaning for the domestic workload. And, you know, if men could take up that parental leave, if they could take a couple of months, then the stats around the world show it makes a difference. It makes a difference in how the domestic work and the childcare is shared. And men are actually tend to be happier. They tend to be more productive when they're able to work flexibly, but they don't take it up. The percentage is really, really low. So this particular essay is Annabel Crabb sort of looking at what research there is, and there isn't a lot yet, but what research there is about these barriers that prevent men from also taking up flexible work, from taking time off to be with their families. And because, you know, that's also what's needed in order to, you know, if we're going to have equality at work, then we also need equality at home. And so, yeah, it's fascinating. She's never confrontational about it. She always writes with really good humour. But she wants to raise that conversation. You know, it's not just how do we encourage women to work. It's how do we encourage men to stay at home. How do we encourage men to work flexibly, to take the time off? So I was really fascinated because actually in my office, the majority of people who work flexibly and part-time are actually the blokes with small children. So my workplace is a little atypical, but it was a really fascinating read. So I thoroughly recommend Men at Work, Australia's Parenthood Trap by Annabel Crabb. Then I finished rereading Persuasion by Jane Austen. You know me, I always love to have some Jane Austen going on. And this for a long time, this was one of my least favourite, but it is definitely growing on me. It's definitely growing on me. Still not one of my favourites, but, you know, as a character, Anne Elliot is definitely growing on me. So this is the story of Anne. You know, she was engaged 8 years ago. She yielded to the persuasion of her godmother because her fiancé, Frederick, was a young naval captain without much fortune. And now they're meeting again in very different circumstances. So she's sort of reduced a bit because her father's in debt, and so he's had to lease their estate. And Captain Wentworth has had a very successful career and is now rich. And they meet again. So yeah, it's a romance. It's quite cute. That's Persuasion by Jane Austen. Okay, so the next thing I have is this. It's a novella that I saw, I didn't even know was coming out, and I think it came out last year, and I saw it on the shelf at the bookshop, and I picked it up because I had to have it, because this is The Fire Opal Mechanism by Fran Wilde, which is the sequel to The Jewel and her Lapidary. So, and I believe there's another novella coming, and I also saw that there's another short story somewhere if I can get hold of it as well. So, this is set far in the future from the first one. So jewels no longer really seem to exist, but it's about a librarian and a thief. And so there's these mysterious pressmen who are sweeping across, and their catch cry is that knowledge should be for all, accessible to all, but only the knowledge they allow to start with, and knowledge without understanding. And so they're getting rid of universities, and they're taking the books and feeding them into their one common book so that all knowledge is available to all, as they say. And so this librarian is trying to defend and save her books. And the thief gets caught up with it. They kind of accidentally time travel and start to figure out what's actually going on and how they're going to save the books. So, and stop what's going on and stop the pressman, because it's actually, yeah, it's linked back into the whole jewels have power thing. And if you don't control the jewels, then shit goes wrong. So, yeah, this was fun. And there's a very gentle, very slow burn, almost not there lesbian romance. It's only right at the end where I went, oh. you know, so it's very gentle and very slow burn, but it's a very adorable story, and it's about libraries and saving books, because books are everything, obviously, because I have a booktube channel. So that's The Fire Opal Mechanism by Fran Wilde. Then I have another post-it note, because another book that I have been waiting for came out. So I immediately pre-ordered it and downloaded it onto my Kindle. And so I got to read Keep Calm and Kill the Chef by Livia Day. So this is, Livia Day is the pen name of Tanzania Raina Roberts, who you know I love her work. Yeah, and this is when she writes crime. This is when she writes her Cafe La Femme series about Tabitha Darling, the cafe owner in Hobart, who just keeps getting caught up in murder. So the first novel is A Trifle Dead. There's a novella that sits in between the first and the second books called The Blackmail Blend. The second novel is Drowned Vanilla. And now we have Keep Calm and Kill the Chef. So in this one, Tabitha has joined a YouTube reality television program, Cafe Wars, and things go slightly pear-shaped when she discovers the body of the famous but very nasty chef that is the host and judge. And she's therefore taken in for questioning, and so she rings her best friend Xanthip, who is now a private detective. And so it jumps back and forwards in time, trying to figure out who actually had a motive for killing this terrible, terrible TV chef. Turns out, a lot of people. And it's full of, you know, the usual Tabitha Darling shenanigans with food and a terrible love life and sparkles and glitter and ball gowns. And Xanthip being awesome. So, yeah, it's great. I loved it. I just devoured it in a couple of days. It's fantastic, cozy crime with food in Tasmania. It's brilliant. So, those were the books that I read. And then on the last day of September, I read 3 comic issues because I realised I was falling behind on my Goodreads goal. And I also discovered, unfortunately, that these are the last 3 issues of Shuri by Nnedi Okorafor. Oh, I didn't realise because Marvel didn't actually announce it, and so I had to actually go and look when a new, because I went into the shop to see if a new version was waiting for me, and it wasn't. And she's like, we haven't had one in a couple of months. I'm like, oh. But it is a full story, so yay. Because apparently Nnedi Okorafor got really busy, and so she's like, I'm going to wrap it up. Anyway, but this is the wrap-up of the story of Shuri in, of course, the Marvel country of Wakanda, the younger sister of the Black Panther T'Challa. But T'Challa has gone off into space and gone missing. And so Shuri is left to defend Wakanda in his place. To find her own place, to find her own power, to accept her own role, to learn new roles. And yeah, this is the last 3 and it's the finale to the battle against the giant space, like, praying mantis thing, bug, that has been menacing Wakanda and singing Aretha Franklin and pop songs. But yes, so it's the giant bug that she accidentally met in space and accidentally lured to Wakanda, and it's been causing black holes and such things. And so these 3 issues finally wrap up that story and figure out who her mysterious online friend is. And yeah, and she gets her own power. Like, you know, it's Shuri coming into her own self. So they were fun. I quite enjoyed them, and I'm really, really sad that Shuri is over. But I definitely recommend reading it. I think it's out in 2 volumes if you don't want to read the issues, if you want to read the trades. But definitely read Shuri, written by Nnedi Okorafor, and these last 3 issues at least were illustrated by Rachel Stott. So yay, Shuri. And that was my September reading. So comment down below if you've read any of those books and let me know what you thought. Or if you want me to tell you more about one of them, let me know about that as well. Always happy to discuss books, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye.